Vice President Kamala Harris says she believes Americans deserve a chance to, quote, turn the page on years of divisiveness in American politics.
She joined her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, for her first sit-down interview since becoming the presumptive Democratic nominee for president.
Walz defended comments about his military service he made in the past when he implied he had been involved in a war zone, and Harris laid out goals for her presidency in broad strokes.
One of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward.
My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is.
White House correspondent Serena Marshall joins us now with highlights from the interview and more from the campaign trail. Serena, good morning.
J. Rob, Alexa, good morning to all of you. Now, Harris essentially did what she needed to in this interview. She stood by her policies, explained those that had changed, and didn't mess up. Whether this will bring in new voters into her corner, I'll leave that to the polls for next week, but it was unlikely to push those who were already backing her away in any way. It wasn't a high bar by any means, but it was one that was in some ways set by her competitors in this race. Trump's team had been challenging that she hadn't sat for an interview, couldn't hold her own in an unscripted setting. This interview lasting roughly 30 minutes in all. Now, in it, as I said, she stood by Biden's policies, something Mr. Trump already jumped on social media, saying that she rambled incoherently, declared her values haven't changed. And saying on that, I agree, her values haven't. But she also, Harris, simultaneously explained how a Harris-Walz administration would be different than the current Biden-Harris administration, while explaining why her positions changed in some ways from her 2019 primary run.
We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed.
Now, this was an effort to show she is behind middle-of-the-road policies, that her day one agenda is based on strengthening the middle class. She even outlined a few specific policies, including extending the child care tax credit and a newer one that she outlined earlier this month on the campaign trail, that $25,000 first-time homebuyer tax credit. She didn't, however, respond to questions about her race and identity politics when she was asked about Mr. Trump's inflammatory comments about her race. And she only said during that response, next question. When it came to that photo, that now viral photo of her grandniece looking up at her at the podium, she said she was deeply touched by it, but again, didn't comment about being the possible first female president. Maybe most surprising, though, Harris didn't go in hard on issues her campaign has been hitting Mr. Trump the hardest on, like reproductive rights, instead focusing on ones that could bring in perhaps those independents and even GOP voters, saying she'd even appoint a Republican in her cabinet if elected. But reproductive rights is an issue former President Trump is now emphasizing on the campaign trail.
I've been seeing a lot of IVF, and I kept hearing that I'm against it, and I'm actually very much for it. In fact, in Alabama, where the judge ruled against it, and I countered the judge and came out with a very strong statement for it. The government is going to pay for it, or we're going to get or mandate your insurance company to pay for it, which is going to be great.
He didn't provide any details on how that mandate would be paid for, but this is an issue Republicans have struggled to navigate, and it really came to a head after the overturning of Roe and that Alabama Supreme Court ruling that occurred this past February. It ruled that frozen embryos are people, and people then can be held liable for destroying them. And in IVF, many embryos are often created in this process, with the remainder after the fertilization treatments destroyed. On Capitol Hill this summer, there was a bill that would enshrine access to IVF, and it did mandate insurance coverage for the procedure. It was before Congress. In the Senate, every Republican except Senators Collins and Murkowski voted against that measure, and that includes Senator Vance, Mr. Trump's running mate. You guys.
All right, White House correspondent Serena Marshall. Thank you, Serena.